course in this series. And in this particular course, we're going to look at two schedules. One that we can see here for capital expenditure, and a second one for a debt schedule. Now, there's really two things motivating us to build this particular schedule. The first one is down here. You can see we have a nice depreciation summary all the way across here. We absolutely need to summarize the depreciation so that we can put together the company's income statement. And the other main reason that we're putting together the schedule is actually right down here. We absolutely need to forecast the Capex. We need a Capex summary because this is going to flow to the company's cash flow statement, and we need this line item to complete that cash flow statement. So what we were really after with the schedule was these figures down here. But what we also did was we put together a couple of corkscrews. Why did we do that? Well, we didn't need to, but we had all the component pieces, so we thought it would be a good idea to track two things in a corkscrew. One is right here, property, plant, and equipment for the office, and the second one is here, property, plant, and equipment across here for the software. So this particular model does not have a balance sheet, so we really didn't have to calculate these corkscrews for PPE Office and PPE Software, but we thought it was a nice thing to do just so we could track the cumulative amounts that have been spent on those two line items. Now, as you can see, we've jumped ahead here to the debt schedule. If you haven't put together a debt schedule before, you are in for a treat, but also a little bit of a challenge. First, it's important to understand why we need the schedule in the model. Remember, we're trying to put together an income statement. Down here, we definitely need the interest expense line for the income statement. We want to look at interest expense here, take off the interest income, and then get a net interest expense, so we can translate that right through to the income statement. Now, the reason that this particular schedule may be tricky is because there's going to be some line items like this one, the change in cash, we won't have yet because we haven't constructed the company's cash flow statement. Also down here, cash from operations and cash from investing. Again, we don't have the cash flow statement done yet, so these won't exactly match up in your model. So don't worry about those line items not matching up just yet. We're going to walk you through every step of the way. The other thing that you may notice is you may be looking at the schedule saying, wait a sec, I thought this was a debt schedule, so why do we have cash and why are we tracking cash on a debt schedule? Well, there's two reasons for that. The first reason that we include a cash section here is we need interest income. We need the interest income to net off down here to get to net interest income. And that reason may be obvious, but there's another reason why we're tracking cash here as well. The other reason that we're tracking the company's cash balance up here is because we need it to flow down into this available cash section. This helps us determine whether or not the company needs to draw on the revolver or whether it can afford to repay the revolver. So first one is down here. You can see we have a nice depreciation summary all the way across here. We absolutely need to summarize the depreciation so that we can put together the company's income statement. And the other main reason that we're putting together the schedule is actually right down here. We absolutely need to forecast the Capex. We need a Capex summary because this is going to flow to the company's cash flow statement, and we need this line item to complete that cash flow statement. So what we were really after with the schedule was these figures down here. But what we also did was we put together a couple of corkscrews. Why did we do that? Well, we didn't need to, but we had all the component pieces, so we thought it would be a good idea to track two things in a corkscrew. One is right here, property, plant, and equipment for the office, and the second one is here, property, plant, and equipment across here for the software. So this particular model does not have a balance sheet, so we really didn't have to calculate these corkscrews for PPE Office and PPE Software, but we thought it was a nice thing to do just so we could track the cumulative amounts that have been spent on those two line items. Now, as you can see, we've jumped ahead here to the debt schedule. If you haven't put together a debt schedule before, you are in for a treat, but also a little bit of a challenge. First, it's important to understand why we need the schedule in the model. Remember, we're trying to put together an income statement. Down here, we definitely need the interest expense line for the income statement. We want to look at interest expense here, take off the interest income, and then get a net interest expense, so we can translate that right through to the income statement. Now, the reason that this particular schedule may be tricky is because there's going to be some line items like this one, the change in cash, we won't have yet because we haven't constructed the company's cash flow statement. Also down here, cash from operations and cash from investing. Again, we don't have the cash flow statement done yet, so these won't exactly match up in your model. So don't worry about those line items not matching up just yet. We're going to walk you through every step of the way. The other thing that you may notice is you may be looking at the schedule saying, wait a sec, I thought this was a debt schedule, so why do we have cash and why are we tracking cash on a debt schedule? Well, there's two reasons for that. The first reason that we include a cash section here is we need interest income. We need the interest income to net off down here to get to net interest income. And that reason may be obvious, but there's another reason why we're tracking cash here as well. The other reason that we're tracking the company's cash balance up here is because we need it to flow down into this available cash section. This helps us determine whether or not the company needs to draw on the revolver or whether it can afford to repay the revolver. So this section here is really there just to make the revolving credit line section here all the way across here work perfect. So there's really lots to digest in this debt schedule. Don't worry, we're going to walk you through it every step of the way. And after these next lessons, I hope you're going to find that you're very, very familiar and comfortable with putting debt schedules into models like this one. Let's jump ahead to the next video and get it all started. Now, this capital expenditure schedule that we're looking at here is really pretty straightforward. We're really going to encourage you to try to fill this out completely on your own, and then we'll walk through it for you afterwards. So the reason that we're quite confident that you'll be able to do this is because this entire schedule is just links or simple formulas. We're going to use those to put together two corkscrews. Let's walk through a little bit of it just to give you some hints. Now, one thing to remember is that just before this video, you should have had the opportunity to download two files from our learning management system. One would be the template that we're looking at right now, which is an Excel file. The other thing would be a PDF printout of the completed model. Now, you definitely want to look at that PDF printout to make sure that as you're building this particular schedule up, all your numbers are matching that PDF. So let's get started. What you're going to want to do in here for the number of employees is that's going to be just a straight link. And then knowing the number of employees is going to allow you to calculate how many new employees were added. We've got the Capex per employee, which we can translate all the way across this row, and that's going to allow you to calculate the office Capex. Once that top section is completed, you'll have everything that you need to calculate and fill out this corkscrew from one period to the next to the next. That's the way corkscrews always work. They go from left to right. Now, the next section will be down here below this blue line. All across here, if you were to put in some numbers, you'll notice this is blue font. So that means we're asking you to load some data in here. So just look at the PDF and load in the numbers that you see. Once that software spend is in there, then you'll have everything that you need to put together this second corkscrew here. And then finally, with those two corkscrews complete, you will have absolutely everything you need to calculate this section down below, which you'll find is just simple formulas and a few little links. So hopefully hopefully that was a good overview just to get you started. We're really eager for you to hop in there and try it on your own. Remember, do what you can. If you get stuck in a couple places, that's no big deal, because we're going to walk through it with you and make sure that you have all the correct formulas in place. Good luck, and we'll see you soon. Now this capital... So hopefully you had good success filling out this schedule. Well, let's just go through it quickly just to make sure that you have the same formulas that we do. Let's get started. So first up, the number of employees here. You're going to find this is just a simple link. Let's hop into the cell, put an equal sign. We're going to use the page up button here. We need to go up a fair distance here to find the number of employees. And we're going to find it here. You can see employee scheduling right there. It's going to be right down at the bottom here. Row 115 is the employee count. We just hit enter and we've established that link. Let's just roll things up a little bit here with the scroll lock key so we can see exactly what we're doing. So now what we can do is quick copy, highlight across, Alt-S down to formulas and hit enter. So next up, let's go down here. New employees added right into this cell. And what you may have done in this cell for a formula is just put in a simple equals this number of employees minus the number of employees in the previous period. That's going to be fine for now. We're going to come back and modify this in a second, but let's just hit enter for now and leave this as is. So in this cell here, we're just going to put in an equal sign and a link to the Capex per employee that we've loaded in there of 10 and hit enter. So next up, to calculate office Capex, put in an equal sign. We're literally going to multiply new employees added times Capex per employee. We're going to hit enter. Let's do a copy. Let's just paste it forward one column like that for now. And that's going to put us in a nice place now to copy these across. So we'll grab these, copy all the way across here, Alt-S, down to formulas, and hit enter. Now, one of the things we noted is that we might want to make a change to this formula here. So let me explain for a second. If we pop up here, you don't need to do this on your computer. You can just observe for a second. Let's imagine out here that the number of employees actually dropped. And let's just hard code a 7 in there for 1 second. You can see then that's going to cause a negative office Capex here. So we really want to prevent this from coming out as a negative number. So what we're going to do in there to do that, again, instead of using an if statement, what we're going to do is use a max function, okay? We're going to pop in here. Let's wrap this in a max function. Open up the bracket like that. We're going to take the max of this here, put in a comma, and 0. Close the bracket and hit enter. Now we're going to copy that and paste it all the way forward, Alt-S, down to formulas, and you can see that prevents the negative down here. Now before we forget, let's copy this formula and paste the formula across there just to get rid of that hard-coded 7. So that's the change that we want. We want the max function in there to prevent a negative number. Now with this section of the model completed right here, we're in a perfect position to do the corkscrew that's down below for PPE Office. So what we're going to do here, we've got this number loaded in. The office Capex is just going to be an equal sign and link up to the office Capex there. When we get down to the bottom here, we're going to put in a sum function. Open up the bracket, grab these 3 cells, and hit enter. So we're just summing those 3 numbers up just like that. So let's just fill out this next column here, and then we'll be in a position to paste everything forward. So here's where the corkscrew comes in. We say equals, and we reach back to the ending balance there, hit enter. For the office Capex, we can just do a copy, paste special, formulas, and then for the depreciation equals, we're going to link to this depreciation amount here, and then we can take our sum function, and Alt-S, paste special, the formulas there. So let's take a look at these formulas quickly. There we are reaching back to the ending balance for the previous period. We're loading in the new office Capex. We're subtracting off depreciation here, and then we have a sum function for our ending balance. With that completed, it's really simple. We're just going to do a copy here and highlight all the way across to the end, Alt-S, down to formulas, and we're all set with that corkscrew. So we already have the top half of the schedule done. Let's jump ahead to the next video, and we're going to start in on the PPE software corkscrew. We'll see you there. Now, as we mentioned when we were going through the tour of this particular schedule, across here for the software spend, these are all inputs, and we wanted you to put the information in here. And we're going to use a little trick that we've used before. Notice that we've highlighted these cells in advance. Most of them are zeros, so we're going to put in a 0 like this, and then hit Control-Enter, and populate zeros all the way through really quickly. Now, you would have definitely needed to look at the PDF copy of the model to know what numbers to put in here. So let's go across, and we're going to show you how most people would load data in, and then give you a tip on how to load it even faster. So let's put in the first number, 2500 like this, and hit Enter. Then we have to go up and move over and do the same thing again, like this. And notice how slow it is moving up and over all the time like this to enter the data. So let's just undo those 2 steps and look at a different method. Instead, what we could do, which is a little bit quicker, is we highlight across these 4 cells where we want to put in data first. Now we go 2500, Enter, goes to the next cell, 2500. Enter, 2500, enter, 1000, enter. So that's just a little nice tip to keep in your back pocket. Excel is obviously set up to enter data vertically. So if you're going to put data into a cell and you're just hitting the enter key, it's going to move down. If you're loading data horizontally, great idea to select it first, and every time you hit enter, it'll just index over to the right for you. Now let's head over here and work on the corkscrew for PPE Software. Software Capex. That's going to be a simple link right here to the row that we just completed. We can put our sum function in at the bottom like this, open the bracket, we're grabbing 3 numbers, hitting enter, and pop up here, beginning balance. It's going to link backwards to the ending balance. Software Capex we've got, let's copy that, and do Alt-S to paste the formulas over here. The depreciation we're going to equal to the previous amount, which was 0. And then we've got our sum function here. We can copy forward and paste special formulas, just like that. Now that we have this column completed here, let's do a copy, highlight across, Alt-ES, paste special formulas, and hit enter. We're all done that corkscrew. Now you may think it's a little bit odd that we've set the depreciation to 0. This management consulting company is currently developing this software. So pouring a lot of money into the software Capex. We're not charging any depreciation yet because they haven't yet reached commercial production where they're going to start selling access to the software. So the depreciation amounts are set to 0 for now. And further out beyond the scope or the timeline of this model is when they would start attaining commercial production, and then you'd have a depreciation amount which would be non-zero. Now given that they're still developing the software, not yet in commercial production, we could have set this label as WIP software, meaning work in progress. The idea is that you'd often categorize something like this as a work in progress until you reach commercial production, and then it would flip over to property, plant, and equipment. We just left it here as property, plant, and equipment software to keep things simple and also consistent with what we have up here. Now we can quickly finish up the bottom section here. Depreciation summary, office equipment equals negative. We're going to link up to this -1, and that's going to give us a positive number there. Software equals negative. Link up to this depreciation amount. And then what we want in here is just a little sum function to grab those 2 cells right there and hit enter. Now we can link up down here office Capex equals, we're not going to put a negative sign because we already have a positive number up here. So we're going to do a direct link like that. Software Capex, we can link up to right here, software spend. And then a little sum function in here, open the bracket, grab those 2 cells, we're all set. But next up, let's copy and paste all these together. We're going to highlight all these like this, copy all the way across these 2 sections, Alt-S, down to formulas, and hit enter. So we want all these numbers down here to show up as positives. But when you have a row with an entry of zeros like this, not a bad idea to test it. Watch what we're going to do. Let's just put a non-zero number in there like -5 for depreciation, and we have the +5 coming out there, which is what we want. So we can undo that now that we've performed that test, and everything's looking just fine. So let's jump ahead next to the debt schedule. As we mentioned, it's going to be really interesting. There's going to be some challenges, but we're going to be there with you every step of the way. Lots of cool stuff in there to learn. We'll see you in a moment. Because we're going to be connecting 3 lines here to the cash flow statement, and the cash flow statement's not complete, so these lines will not match. Let's jump right into it, and we'll show you where those lines are to get started. So the first row that's going to connect into the cash flow statement is right down in here, and we have the section where we're monitoring the company's cash balance. It's right here, the increase or decrease in cash for each period. So let's go in here and get this linked up. So we can put in equal sign here. We're going to use the page down button just a couple of times. Now we can see the cash flow statement emerging down here. Remember, we're looking for the increase or decrease in cash. We're going to always see that at the bottom of the cash flow statement right here. It's the change in cash near the bottom. So we can just hit enter and we have that connected. Let's just scroll up a little bit so we can see everything again. Perfect. So with that link done, let's go back here, copy everything again. So we can just hit enter and we have that connected here. It's the change in cash near the bottom. So we can just hit enter and we have that connected. Let's just scroll up a little bit so we can see everything again. Perfect. So with that link done, let's go back here, copy, highlight across, Alt-S down to formulas to pay special formulas. So there's two more rows that need to connect to the cash flow statement, and they are these two right here, cash from operations, cash from investing. So let's pop in here and get this connected. We'll put in an equal sign, cash for operations, page down a couple of times, and we can see as we come to the cash flow statement here is cash from operations right here, subtotal in row 497. Let's hit enter. Let's use a scroll lock key just to roll things back up again, so we can just see exactly what we're doing with this debt schedule. Perfect. So next up, we have the cash from investing. Let's put in an equal sign, back down, page down a couple of times. There's the cash flow statement. We want to just drift down so that we can see everything here, and we're linking into cash from investing right there. Row 502, we're going to hit enter, and again, let's use the scroll lock key. We want to be able to see the entire debt schedule right here. So now that these are done, let's grab both of them here, do a copy with the Control C all the way across, Alt-S down to formulas, and hit enter. So let's quickly check these linkages we just put in place. We're in column G, so obviously these should also be connected to column G. Let's just hit F2. So we're connected to G, 512. So check that one. And then down here, if we hit F2, 497, and finally 502. Just check those to make sure that they match on your model as well. So the connections from the debt schedule to the cash flow statement are now done. Remember, if you're looking at that PDF of the completed model, these three lines we just put in place will not match because we just connected to a blank schedule, so these are all showing zeros. Don't worry about it. Next video, we'll get started. We'll show you how to make sure that everything's correct. See you soon. So now that we have the connections to the cash flow statement in place, we're going to be focused on getting the right amounts for two things. Number one, the cash, and number two, the revolver. What we're not going to do just yet is calculate interest income or interest expense. We're just going to be focused on the amounts for cash and the revolver. Let's take a look. So where we can start is down in here in this cash section. We can see that we have a beginning balance, and here there's no increase or decrease. So what we do to get the ending balance is we're just going to put in a simple sum function like this, and we're going to grab these two numbers and hit enter. So let's pop up here now, and this is where the corkscrew comes into play because we reach back one period and down to the ending balance, and that gives us the beginning balance. Now let's pop down to this cell, copy the sum function, forward one cell, Alt-S to pay special the formulas. Now we're going to grab these, copy, highlight all the way across like that, Alt-S down to formulas for the pay special. So there's obviously no movements to the cash balance happening yet because there's no increases or decreases in cash coming through. As we mentioned, we're going to skip over this section here with interest income. Let's go here. Beginning cash balance. Well, that's easy. Let's just establish a link up to this cell here. And then cash for revolving credit line. That's going to be a sum function, open bracket, grab these three cells and hit enter. So now that these are in place, we can copy them and highlight all the way across here, Alt-S down to formulas and hit enter. So we obviously have completed one corkscrew here for the cash. It's cash corkscrew. Now we want to complete the corkscrew down here for the revolver. So we're deliberately going to skip this row here because we're going to ask you to try to do that yourself. But what we want at the bottom is obviously a sum function, open the bracket. We're going to add up these two cells right here and hit enter. And what we're going to do here for this beginning balance is obviously reach back to the ending balance in the previous period. Now let's do some copying and pasting. For the sum function, copy, Alt-S down to formulas. Now we're going to grab these cells here, copy, and we're going to paste special them, Alt-S down to formulas all the way across like that. So now with those formulas in place, we're going to set you up with a little assignment. First up, let's go up to this line right here. And what we're going to ask you to do, if you wouldn't mind, is for this increase, decrease in cash, let's go into these three cells here. Let's highlight across April, May, and June. We're going to change the fill color momentarily. So Alt-H for fill color. And we're going to just suggest over here, we're going to grab this light orange color like that. Then we're going to go down to the cash from operations and tap the F4 key to also change those to orange. Now the reason we change the color of these is because we're going to ask you to hard code some values in. Let's select across like this. And we're going to go negative, formulas all the way across like that. So now with those formulas in place, we're going to set you up with a little assignment. First up, let's go up to this line right here. And what we're going to ask you to do, if you wouldn't mind, is for this increase, decrease in cash, let's go into these three cells here. Let's highlight across April, May, and June. We're going to change the fill color momentarily. So Alt-H for fill color. And we're going to just suggest over here, we're going to grab this light orange color like that. Then we're going to go down to the cash from operations and tap the F4 key to also change those to orange. Now the reason we change the color of these is because we're going to ask you to hard code some values in. Let's select across like this. And we're going to go negative 5555, enter. And then we're going to go 3333, enter. And same thing, 3333, enter again. So these figures here for cash from operations may translate through to corresponding increase or decrease in cash. So we're going to ask you to copy these and let's go up here and do a paste special, which is Alt-S down to values and enter. So at this point, your model should have hard-coded values right here to match ours in these orange cells and also the same hard-coded values right here in these orange cells. What we're going to do now in the next video is we're going to populate our model across here for this row and then walk you through how you can try to build this row yourself. See you in a second. Now, as you can see, we've gone ahead here and we've populated all the way across this row. We're going to walk you through some guidance and some hints for how you can try to populate yours as well. But what we would ask you to do is if you could please just mark these three cells here with that same orange color, and then we'll get started. So where we want to start is up in this section right here, labeled available cash. And you want to think about this section is it's really a recreation of the cash flow statement, if you will, but we've left out one piece, the revolver, because we want to use this section to figure out what the revolver needs to do for the company in order to keep everything in balance. So normally on a cash flow statement, you would see cash from operations, cash from investing, and cash from financing. But we've left cash from financing out. We want to go through all of these line items and then use these line items to figure out what the revolver needs to do, if anything. So that may have sounded like a lot. Let's walk through some examples and look at the numbers. Over here, if we start in April, we can see the company started out with $2.6 million in cash, but its operations consumed $5.5 million. If we add all that up, we can see at the end here, the company is now in a $2.9 million deficit. So what happens is they borrow that $2.9 million amount from the revolving credit line. So let's pop up to the next month here, in May. You can see the company starts with a negative cash balance, but the cash from operation builds about $3.3 million. So if we add all that up, the company is in a slightly positive position here, $378. So what does it use that cash for? It uses that cash to pay down the revolver by that exact amount. Now up to the next month. Here, want to go to June. We're starting with a small cash balance. The operations again build about 3.3 million. And so we have positive 3.7 million. What will the company do with that money? Well, the company will not use the entire amount here to pay down the revolver because it would pay the revolver down too much. So the company here only pays down exactly the remaining balance on the revolver. So here's what we're going to recommend. Take a screenshot or maybe write down these numbers so you can see these numbers that are in orange right here for April, May, and June. And what we're going to ask you to do next is to try to build in the formula right across this row, and especially getting those numbers to match in the orange cells. Now, this is definitely going to be a tricky formula to build. Give it a try. In fact, don't worry if you can't quite get it. At least if you've thought through it, then when we take it up, it's going to really make sense, and you'll learn so much more if you've given it a shot already on your own. Good luck. We'll see you in the next video. So hopefully you were able to give it a try in building all the way across this row right here. We're going to take it up to make sure that you understand it and you have the correct formula. And even if you've got a formula working, we may be able to show you an easier way to do it with something more simple. Let's take a look. So what we're going to do here first, before we build a formula, is we're going to manually just put some links in. For instance, let's look at this first period here. The company is clearly short this amount, $2.9 million. So it needs to borrow that amount on the revolver. So one thing we could do right here is we could say equals negative and link up to this cell so that we're now borrowing the exact amount down here that matches the amount that the company is short. So far, that's pretty simple. Let's take this formula that we put in here and copy it forward to see if it'll work. So we're going to do a copy, and then we're going to go here, paste special, just one period, down to formulas, and hit enter. So we know it's working for April. Let's look at May. The company now has a little bit of excess cash, 378. You can see we're paying down that exact amount on the revolver. So the formula appears to be working here as well. So let's grab the formula, copy, and then Alt-ES down to formulas and paste it into the next period. Now let's see what's happening in June. The company has this excess cash amount of 3.7 million, but it's using that entire amount to repay the revolver. And as we can see at the bottom, it's actually overpaying the revolver, which the company would never do. What should be happening is the company should be paying down this amount, which is roughly 2.6 million. So the correct formula in this case could be equals negative this amount so that we get it paying down perfectly to a balance of 0 right here. So let's look at the formulas that we've built in so far. They're definitely not consistent across here, but let's look at what is consistent. If we tap F2, we can see that each one has a negative sign in the front. This one does, and the third one does as well. Now let's look carefully at which rows we're linking to. We're linking to row 388, 388 again, and then 392. In fact, let's mark the exact cells that our formulas are linking to. Up here, let's change the fill color, Alt-HH. We're going to go to this blue right in the center there, and now we're going to hit F4 because we link to this one, and we link to that one as well. So let's focus in on this row across here like this, and also this row. And we need to think about how to tell the computer to link to those blue cells. In fact, the way that we're going to tell the computer which cell to link to is we're always going to ask it to link to the smallest of these two cells in each row. For instance, between this negative number and the 0, the smallest one is the negative number. Between this number and this number, the smallest one is in blue. And also here, the smallest of these two numbers in June is the one down here in blue. Now we can get the computer to take the smaller of two numbers by using a min function, which stands for minimum. So let's pop down into these cells here. And the one thing that we remember about these three formulas is that they all have negative signs in front of them. Well, let's keep the negative signs. But what we're going to do here is put in negative min, open the bracket, and then we're going to select the beginning balance, comma, and this cell right here. And then we can close the bracket and hit enter. So what we're doing in here is we're just taking the smallest of these two values here, and then we're inverting it with this negative sign so it comes out in the opposite direction. Let's take this formula here and copy it, and then highlight across this entire row and do Alt-ES down to formulas and hit enter. Now let's make absolutely sure the formula is working. The company's short 2.9 million, and we're borrowing that amount on the revolver right here. A little bit of excess cash here, it's used to pay down the revolver a little bit. Here, the company has $3.7 million in cash, but it perfectly just pays the revolver down to a 0 balance. Looks like it's working great. Let's just do some quick cleanup now. We're going to copy here, so do a copy of these cells, and then go across and just do a straight paste, Control V like that to clean up the colors. So the formula that we put together in here is definitely tricky. A lot of people struggle with it, so don't feel badly if you didn't quite get it, and definitely review the video again if you don't quite understand everything that's going on. Let's jump ahead now and get the schedule completed. We'll see you soon. So in this video, we really want to accomplish two things. Number one, we want to make sure that you have a thorough understanding of a revolving line of credit and how it works in a model. And number two, we want to set you up with a little assignment here that you can accomplish that tests the limit of the revolving line of credit and performs a check and some alerts which could go off in the model. Let's get started. Let's start off with an understanding of a revolving line of credit here. First of all, they go by many names. Sometimes it's called a revolving credit line, as our label would imply. Sometimes it's just a credit line, could be called an overdraft, could also just be called a revolver for short, or an operating line. It actually is a piece of debt which has a lot of different names. Now, what's important for you to understand about a revolving credit line, as you can see right here, is they usually have physical limits. The limits are implied by the lenders, and as we can see right here, this particular revolver has a limit of $1 million. But what we can clearly see in the model, at least in the state it's in right now, is that we are exceeding the limit on the revolver in these two periods. So you may be asking yourself the question, why would we allow the model to borrow more than the actual limit on the revolver? And the answer is this. While there may be a physical limit imposed by the lenders, when you're modeling companies, you should never impose a limit on a revolver. Now, the reason that you don't impose physical limits on revolvers and models is because if you get a situation that looks like this, where the model needs, say, $2.9 million in April, but the physical limit is $1 million, if you impose that physical limit, then the cash balance would flip to a negative value. You don't want to show a negative cash balance on the company's balance sheet. Negative cash means the company's borrowing. So it's better practice to let the company borrow on the revolver at the appropriate interest rate, in this case 8%, because instead, if we flip the cash balance to a negative value, we'd essentially be letting the company borrow at 3%, which is unrealistic. Better to have the company borrow at 8%, which is a more reasonable rate for a revolver. Now, we mentioned a negative cash balance, and you may notice that up here we're showing a negative cash balance and also down here. We're only showing that negative cash balance because we've hard-coded these values in orange. Once we replace these with formulas, you will not see a negative cash balance in the model anymore. So the assignment that we want to set you up with is right in here. We want you to apply conditional formatting to this row, row 395, 2024, such that it will highlight any periods when we've exceeded the limit here of $1 million. Then what we'd like you to do down in here is determine in this cell if the limit has been exceeded or not. And you can see if we put a 0 in here, it will say no. And if we put a 1, it will say yes. And it's already conditionally formatted there for you. We'll delete this out. So you want to put a formula in here that tests if the limit has been exceeded and then either puts an appropriate 0 or 1 in place. So try your best at getting the correct formula in here to test whether the limit's been exceeded, and also put that conditional formatting in place across this row. Pause the video and we'll see you in the next one where we'll take it up and make sure that you've done everything correctly. We'll see you soon. So let's look at two things in this video. Number one, we're going to put the conditional formatting in place right across this row to make sure that the alerts are going off and showing us when the revolver limit has been exceeded. And then we also want to pick that up down here in this cell with a formula that shows us a global check across the entire forecast period if the revolver has ever exceeded the limit. Let's get started. So the first thing to always remember up here with conditional formatting is before you start it, you want to select all the cells which the conditional formatting will apply to. We're going to hold down Control, Shift, and then hit the right arrow to select all the way across. Now tap the Alt key right up here, H for home, and then across to here, which is an L for conditional formatting. Brings up this dialog box. Let's go down here to New Rule, and then we're going to go down to Use a formula to determine which cells to format. Hit the Tab key to get into this dialog box right here. Now that we're in this dialog box, we can use the arrows to select this cell right here. And the trick here is notice that this cell is completely locked down with $signs. So let's use the F4 key to select and unlock that cell. We want to test if that cell is greater than, now use the arrows again, there's the limit. Now the limit is locked down, which is what we want. So this is the test. We essentially lock down the limit here, but we want this cell here, which is cell G394, to be unlocked so it can travel all the way across the selection, perform the test on every period. Now that we have the test in place, let's go over here and use the mouse and click on Format to design the format. In terms of the fill color, we can go down here to More Colors, and we want to go here and click on Custom. We're going to put in an RGB code that we use here at CFI. It's going to be 250. Use the tab 9828. It gives us this nice bright orange color over here. We'll click OK to that. That'll be the fill color. Let's go over to font. We want the font to be bold, and we're going to select a white font that'll stand out on top of the orange, and we're going to click OK here. You can see a sample preview there. Looks great. Let's click the OK button here, and we've got that put in place. Now let's progress over here to see whether or not the limit's been exceeded. And let's refresh our memory. If there's a 0 in the cell, it's formatted to show up as a no. But we can see that we're going to have a yes situation on our hands because the limit's been exceeded. So if we put a 1 in the cell, then we get a yes. So the formula in here, we're going to want to return a yes for us. Let's delete that out and think about what that formula should be. Now sometimes where people struggle with a formula like this is they often think about how to test this limit, and then this limit, and then this limit, when really all we need to do is actually select all the way across and look at the maximum. If the maximum in this selection here is greater than 1 million, then the limit's been exceeded. So let's apply that logic down into the cell now. So with that logic in our minds, what we can do now is say equals if, I'm going to open the bracket, and the logical test will be this. If the maximum of this selection across here like that, well, if that maximum is greater than this limit here, then the limit's been tripped. So we should put in a 1, which will format as a yes. Otherwise, we're going to put in a 0, and then we close the bracket there and hit enter. So the trick to this formula was really about knowing that you can use a maximum all the way across here. And as long as the maximum is exceeding the limit, then we know that the limit has been exceeded. Now, the other thing to bring to your attention is the cover page. Remember, we want these alerts to go back to the cover page. So let's go over to the cover page, and we can see here that the revolving credit line here is not within its limit. So let's pop back over here. Things seem to be working correctly right now. When it's exceeding its limit, let's do a little test. If you wouldn't mind going into your model right here, let's just hard code now a 0 in there. A yes. Otherwise, we're tripped. I'm going to open the bracket, and the logical test will be this. If the maximum of this selection across here like that, well, if that maximum is greater than this limit here, then the limit's been tripped. So we should put in a 1, which will format as a yes. Otherwise, we're going to put in a 0, and then we close the bracket there and hit enter. So the trick to this formula was really about knowing that you can use a maximum all the way across here. And as long as the maximum is exceeding the limit, then we know that the limit has been exceeded. Now, the other thing to bring to your attention is the cover page. Remember, we want these alerts to go back to the cover page. Let's go over to the cover page, and we can see here that the revolving credit line here is not within its limit. So let's pop back over here. Things seem to be working correctly right now. When it's exceeding its limit, let's do a little test. If you wouldn't mind going into your model right here, let's just hard code now a 0 in there, and also a 0 here, so that now it's not exceeding its limit. Things seem to be working really nicely. Limit exceeded, no. Let's go back to the cover page, and everything seems to be fine there. Perfect. So now that we've performed that check, knowing that the alerts are coming through nicely, let's go back to the model page and put these hard codes back in. Minus 5555, and the same value should go in here. Minus 5555, enter. We want these values here so that we can calculate some interest income and some interest expense in the next video. We'll see you there. So what we'd like to do here is set you up with one last assignment, which will be to complete the remainder of this debt schedule. But let's give you a few tips and some guidance to set you on a path to success. So first, let's discuss the rates, the interest rates. These are annual rates here. So an annual rate of 3%, but what we're obviously looking for in each one of these periods is a monthly rate. Same would go for the revolver, where the company is being charged 8% per annum. We're looking for a monthly rate to be in these cells here. Then what we're going to ask you to do is calculate here the interest income. It's going to be based on the monthly rate that you come up with and the cash balance that you see up above. Same thing down here for the interest expense. Will be based on the monthly rate or the monthly equivalent of the 8% annual rate and looking at the amount on the revolving credit line. So we're also going to ask you to format these so that interest income here comes out as a positive number. Interest expense here comes out also as a positive number. Then down at the bottom, we're going to bring interest expense in here as a positive, but then we're going to subtract off interest income so that you can combine them to get a net interest expense at the bottom. So good luck with this assignment. And remember, if you get stuck in any of the places, don't let that stop you. Continue on. Finish as much of the schedule as you can, at least trying every row and every cell. And if you get stuck, we'll show you in the next video how we've calculated everything to make sure that you have the same formulas. Good luck, and we'll see you soon. So So let's jump in and take a look at the monthly interest rates here, and then calculate some interest income and some interest expense. So first off, down here for this interest rate, all we really need to do is divide this rate by 12. So let's pop into this cell and say equals here. Now we want to do some cell locking. Tapping F4 once would completely lock it, but we only want to lock the E reference like that. We want the 378 to be able to move. Let's divide now by 12 and hit enter. So now we can do a copy, which is Control C, highlight across, Alt S, down to formulas, and hit enter. We're all down that line. Now all we need to do for this next line here for interest income is put in an equal sign and multiply the rate through by the beginning balance like this. Now we can copy this, highlight across, Alt S, down formulas, and hit enter. Now one comment here on the balance that we used. Notice that we used the beginning balance. Generally for monthly models, it is okay to just use the beginning balance, and this makes the model accurate enough. One thing for you to keep in mind though, if we were building this as a quarterly model or an annual model, then what we would need to do is take an average between the beginning balance and the ending balance in order to make the model more accurate over those longer periods. Now one thing to keep in mind though, is if we were to include the ending balance in this calculation, it would put a circular loop into the financial model. It's not something that we'll discuss in this course, but really quickly what that means is interest income will flow all the way down and into the company's income statement. From the income statement, it'll go to the cash flow statement. From the cash flow statement, it will influence this amount here, which will influence the ending balance, which will go all the way back into here. So it will go in a circular pattern, something that we discuss in some other CFI courses on financial modeling. Now we put some effort into the cell locking in this cell here. So now we can just go all the way across here and do a copy. Let's go down to this section, Alt S, paste special formulas to put these in place. Now, as we mentioned before, it's always a good idea to check our work. Let's pop into this cell and we can see it's indexed over to E397 divided by 12. That looks perfect. Let's pop into this cell. Ooh, looks like we have a problem here. We're gonna have to modify this formula. Now, most people would reach for the mouse at this point. Grab this cell like this with the mouse and move it up. Let's investigate a way instead to do this with a keyboard. Now, this is definitely a keyboard trick that most people don't know. Let's pop into this cell here, tap F2. Here's what we're gonna do. We wanna change the red reference here. So we're gonna use the Shift key and highlight it. Once it's highlighted, hit the F5 key. This is a go-to command. It's put that reference right into here. Now we hit enter. Now we're in a place where we're able to move this red cell with the arrows. So we wanna move it to the beginning balance like this. Now we hit enter. If we pop back in, we can see we've modified that formula with the keyboard. Now there's a couple of keystrokes involved in that one, so maybe it's not a bad idea to practice it once more. Let's pop over here and do the same thing. F2, and highlight this and hit F5, enter. And now we move up to the beginning balance and hit enter. And we've done it. So we know the formula in the first cell here is correct. So let's do a copy, highlight across, Alt S, down to formulas, and hit enter. Perfect. Now doing the summary at the bottom is gonna be really easy at this point. For interest expense, let's just do a straight link up to here, interest expense. Interest income here, we wanna come out as negative. So let's go equals negative, and then link up to the interest income right there. And then in here, we're gonna put a sum function and obviously grab the two cells above and hit enter. Now that that's in place, copy, highlight across, Alt S, down to formulas, and hit enter. Now the numbers across the bottom here may look a little peculiar. That's fine, because remember that we have these hard codes here in orange. We're gonna leave the hard codes for now, but in the next video, we'll show you how to work this rate by 12. So let's pop into this cell and say equals here. Now we wanna do some cell locking. Tapping F4 once would completely lock it, but we only wanna lock the E reference. Like that. We want the 378 to be able to move. Let's divide now by 12 and hit enter. So now we can do a copy, which is Control C, highlight across, Alt S, down to formulas, and hit enter. We're all down that line. Across, Alt S, down to formulas, and hit enter. We're all down that line. Now, now, the hard codes that are in orange worked really well for us through these last discussions. They gave us some numbers to work with, but now we're going to replace them with formulas. So probably the easiest way to do this would be if you could please go across here, grab these three cells like this, copy, and then just do paste here. You should see zeros. We're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to copy these and paste them on top of the orange cells, and everything should revert to zero in your model. Now, the model definitely looks a little peculiar now, but remember, that is because this line right here for the increase or decrease in cash is linked to the cash flow statement, which is not yet completed. Down here, these two lines are the same, linked to that cash flow statement, which we haven't yet done. So really great job in this course, particularly with the debt schedule, which can be a little bit complex. And hopefully now that you've learned a little bit about the revolver, it acts like a lender of last resort. It might have a physical limit implied by the lenders, but remember, we never want to impose a physical limit when we're modeling it. You let the model borrow as much as it needs to on the revolver, and then have an alert which goes off, which tells you the limit's been exceeded. Now, one of the things that you can really look forward to in the next FP&A course in the series is that we're going to aggregate the financial statements. You'll see that when we put the income statement together, and in particular the cash flow statement, then we're going to start matching the PDF printout, and that will be the point in time when you'll be able to check against that printout to make sure things are reconciled properly to that solution. So we're really looking forward to taking you through those links in the income statement, the cash flow statement, and also showing you how to aggregate those into quarterly results and annual results. We'll jump ahead and we'll see you in the next FP&A course. See you there.